So why is it a secret, and why should you care about getting your growth hormone up, otherwise known as insulin-like growth factor? Because it's the single one thing you could do to totally change your health, and I want to show you how. You know, these things are pretty miraculous. All right, they're grapes. Everybody knows what a grape looks like. But this is unexplainable why it's growing so well here. Today it was over 100 degrees in Eastern Carolina. Very hot. That's not grape growing weather. But it has a secret. And the secret is it has the ability to grow roots down deep in the ground, 3 to 15 feet deep. And why is that important? You go, well, eventually it gets to water. Yeah, correct. But actually, the water is right over there. And that water is maybe 3 or 4 feet deep, maybe even less than that. So this is 30 years old, and it discovered if it can go down 3 or 4 feet, if it can have constant water, which it will have, and maybe it's 15 feet deep, it will thrive. We'll put up with a hot weather like today, but look at these grapes. They're well ahead of season. They're all full. They're not shriveled, and it's because they have access to all the water. That's what growth hormone is. Insulin-like growth factor, the ability for you to generate. I don't mean take it as a supplement. I don't mean taking colostrum or anything any other way. I mean for you to generate it endogenously. It would totally transform your life. And I'm going to show you how, and I'm going to go into why. So I'm going to give you 3 steps. And the first step is, basically, this is going to cost you 15 minutes, ideally twice a week, but 15 minutes, and that's the high side. I'm going to give you 6 to 10 exercises that will take you no less than 30 seconds per exercise, no more than 90 seconds, and more than likely it'll be around a minute. So that's 6 or 10, that's 6 minutes to 10 minutes, ideally twice a week. You think you can do that? Then I will change your life. The second thing is we're going to start with each exercise, going to start with a large muscle, and then go small. So this is your largest muscle of your whole body, your quads, and we'll work from there. Let's look at it. Okay, so what is the secret to increasing your growth hormone, and why should you want to do it? I covered a little bit of this in a previous video that I've just done. You might want to watch that. But basically, this is the most necessary thing that you could do for yourself. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do anything strange. You have to use 15 minutes of your life each week, ideally 15 minutes of your life twice a week to get going with this. But anyways, I'm going to explain all that. But this is a single, simplest thing you could do that will transform your life. And I'm not exaggerating, so let's get going. So in case you didn't know Ernestine Shepard, she's a woman who got started into weightlifting in her mid-50s. And she's one of the most, she's probably the fittest 85-year-old, regardless of gender, out there. As you know, if you're over the age of 25, and this is pretty well documented, you're starting to lose muscle mass. And so what can you do about it? 2 things, really. It's making the demand, we'll talk about that, on your muscles. And the other is making sure you eat enough protein. We're not going to go into the protein part. We're going to go into what you need to do and really drill down on the exercise part, okay? Just notice, after 25, it's all downhill. It's kind of sensational, don't you think? And if you're really over the 80, you have a 70% risk of this being a mortality cause. And that men, for specifically, and probably women too, but I know the research from men is that sarcopenia, which is lack of muscle or diminished muscle mass, is the #1 all-cause mortality beyond the age of 60. There you go. All right, so how to do this? We're going to break it down into pretty much 3 parts. And I'll just whip through this. We're going to do the whole body. All right, that sounds intimidating, but not really. We're going to go from large muscle to small muscle. That's pretty much step 1. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you what we do. Then we're going to go slow and steady. 1 set of exercise. 1 set of exercise. I'm going to repeat that 50,000 times. 1 set of exercise, not 3 sets of 10 or anything else. And if you double what I say, you're not going to get any more benefit. So just do what I say. Okay, 1 set of each exercise to failure. And you're going to go for 30 to 90 seconds. And you're going to create failure. That is, you're going to get it to by adding enough weight or resistance so you can't go beyond 90 seconds. Most people, when they start dialing it in, can't go beyond a minute, and they plateau there for a while until they gradually start to increase by creating strength. And the last thing to know is muscles can't count. That's why it's 1 set. and that you need, and this is equally important, is you need to rest. So your muscles never adapt to failure. It is new each time. It is extreme. It's an extreme situation, and it is, in essence, fear-inducing. It is like the saber-toothed tiger is chasing you, have no doubt, or the bear, or the boogeyman, whatever your choice is, you are self-inducing that degree of adrenal shock. And it's important. It's short though. So high-intensity training, slow, high-intensity training, weight resistance, creates a threshold, and this is really important. So the idea that you are going intensely for 30 to 90 seconds, so we're not saying you're doing 45 push-ups. No, if you can do a push-up and you can get fatigued in 90 seconds, great. As you get stronger, somebody's gonna have to sit on your back to induce the ability for you to fatigue in 30 to 90 seconds, okay? But when you do that, that is reaching threshold. So just being tired, and if you don't fatigue, that's not threshold. It's when you exhaust yourself between 30 and 90 seconds. After that, you're done. You're done. You have now set in a cascade of chemical reactions, of biochemical reactions, of metabolic change for the next 48 hours. So threshold, right up here, is where metabolic change happens. So what you're doing, whether you're working on a bicep or your quads or your pecs, you are inducing a systemic, a body-wide change. So let's say you were in a wheelchair and you're a paraplegic and you can only work with your arms, still worth doing. You will create a systemic, body-wide change. Hormonally, vascular, metabolic, skeletal. So that's it. Don't say, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. Can you do your little finger? Let's start there. I'm being a little bit fresh in saying that, but also being 100% truthful. How to maximize the effect of slow HIT, slow high intensity training. There's two ways of doing it. One is the HIT we're talking about, and the other is to have the required amount of protein in your diet each day. As we get older, we have this anabolic resistance. That is, we can't create muscle mass as easily as we could when we were younger than 25. It was all hormonal, did nothing, and you created muscle mass, right? Just be born and you just started creating muscle mass. Clearly, you're high in growth hormone. Now you have to do some work to achieve that. So what we're trying to talk about is muscle protein synthesis, is building muscle mass, strength and size. Strength will come first. So this is what your default process looks like when you do nothing. After 25, your muscle breaks down, which is this line here, more than it builds up. So you are gradually atrophying, you're gradually losing muscle mass, and that's called sarcopenia. This is the process that results from one, doing the exercise we're going to talk about and having the required daily protein in your diet. It's a huge difference. Way up here. So now you're making a lot more muscle mass in your breakdown period, right? Muscle protein breakdown is far less. You've totally changed it by making the demand and making sure you're having the required daily amount of protein each day. And I'm not talking about a protein shake. I'm talking about whole food sources of protein. Okay, here's another way to look at it. You just did your sets we're going to talk about, and you hit this thing called threshold because you went to fatigue within 30 and 60 seconds. All right. Stop, leave the gym, what happens? You'll get this black line that happens. You'll get an increasing rate of growth hormone and all the other metabolic changes that causes through the next 48 hours. Notice, that's why you're working out, that's sleep, awake, sleep, next 48 hours. These little dots, this is protein, this is the bonus effect of having an appropriate amount of protein. And when you break down your protein over 4 at least, and if you're a top athlete, you need to break it down 5 times a day. So when you break it down 4 times a day, that's exactly what you need. So this is now you've increased it. You've worked out here and you've increased it. So 48 hours exercise-induced muscle remodeling. And this is strictly the green arrow with the red slashes. That's specifically meal protein amount induced. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so here's what we do. Whole body, 6 to 10 exercise, and we're working from large to small. So I numbered it. Here's what we do for our legs. So our legs, this is low back and legs. We alternate. So we do it twice a week on a Monday and Friday. So this for me, Judi just does leg presses on Monday and Friday. This is what they call a Jefferson squat. So I do one day of Jefferson squat, and then the next day I do leg press. So that's the first exercise. Second exercise is for your quads. Number 2. 3 is your hamstrings. So remember, it's 30 to 60 seconds. I'm exhausted by the time I get to, and I seldom reach 90 seconds. It's usually around a minute. And I gradually build up. So 4 is low back. This is dumbbells, and this is much more exhausting. And so sometimes I opt for this, which is not an easier form. It's easier to set up. And I like doing 2 different choices, so Monday and Friday. So the 5th exercise is overhead press. We all know about that. The 6th exercise is chest press, right here. 7th exercise alternates. So on a Monday, it's a row, right? I'm pulling, so it's a row, getting my rhomboids and traps to an extent. The other is to a pull down. The pull down is my lats, latissimus dorsi. Okay, and for 8 is deltoids. Remember, 30 to 90 seconds. This is the hardest exercise of the whole bunch. Oh, I forgot about 6. 6 are pecs. I guess I got 6 twice there. Here's pecs there, and there's pecs, 2 different ways of doing pecs. And then I go biceps after deltoids. Biceps are where? Biceps are up there for 9. And number 10 is traps. I do what they call a kickback, and it pushes out. You can choose. You don't have to do 10 exercises. We do 10 exercises, and it is over in 15 to 20 minutes. We take a little longer because we alternate. She does it and I do it, and we time each other. And so we count going out. Okay, so 1 set of exercise, 2 failure. You can't do anymore. Muscles can't count. All they know is time under load, total tension. So that's why you don't rest at the bottom, you don't rest at the top. It's total time under tension. That's really key. So what does failure actually look like? Here's what failure looks like. So I put on a CGM, a continual glucose monitor, and this is how I can document that I hit failure. Because what happens is I have induced that kind of fear of the saber-toothed tiger, the bear, or somebody chasing me so much that I needed to push my adrenal glands into giving me a lot of cortisol that hits my liver and gives me glucose. It's called gluconeogenesis, if you want to know. But I have to now ask for glucose. I need all energy. I can't just be a fat burner. I need sugar burner. Okay, so this is the HIT session. You can tell where I peaked. So this is probably the end of my half-hour session. And it takes a while for that blood sugar to come down. So from that point forward, I have 48 hours of elevated growth hormone. This happens only at failure. And this is about CGM readings. I'm just sort of throwing it out there. This is what a diabetic pattern looks like. You can see it goes up pretty high. You know, the variation is anywhere between this person I'm looking at, one of the clients. It goes from 80 to 200, 250 sometimes. Here's another one. Late at night, what happened here? Either he got very angry, he had a cortisol rush because he was upset about something, or he had some refined carbohydrates. So either way you get there, it's pretty much the same way. Some people have a great diet, but they're stressed all the time, so they're actually making their own glucose. Here's a healthy pattern, which is what I call flat and boring, flat and boring, flat and boring, and that's exactly how you want it. You don't see any difference between your sleeping time much and your daytime. That's perfect. Really good work. Okay, here's another way. What unhealthy patterns look like. Look at these spikes. So this is milligrams per deciliter, which you do in the United States and I think Canada. And this is basically for the rest of Europe, which they call millimoles per liter. Either way, it's a spike. And this spike came from more than likely refined carbohydrates like potato chips or Twinkies, but it also could be extreme anger. But look at the range. It's not flat and boring. It's peaks and then it goes too low and this person has no choice but to get more carbs. And so it goes on and on. It's a roller coaster. So why is this a secret? A secret. Did I exaggerate? It is a secret. Absolutely is a secret. If I randomly took somebody off the street, if I randomly took a neighbor and said, hey, give me 1 week and I want to show you this one thing, it will transform their lives. Is that exaggeration? Not at all. It's not going to cost them anything other than time. It's going to cost them something in terms of effort, personal effort. I use somebody like Ernestine Shepherd, 85, who can bench 150 pounds. She didn't start exercising until her mid-50s. Do you think she discovered something? And there's others who have discovered it later in life. I don't know what late in life is. Later in life. And it made a profound change in their lives. This is what that's about. Let's go take a look at the labs. So here's looking at labs. This is IGF. So what I did is took the last, 20 plus people that I have worked with, and from their labs that I ordered, I arranged them from the highest insulin-like growth factor to the lowest insulin-like growth factor. The range is, they're all within the range. And the last video I went over at what age and what amount you should have. So you got to see that comparison. And none of them were anywhere near it except for one person. So what I want to show you though, there's two ways to get your IGF or your growth factor, which I'm using those words interchangeably. That is the protein and you putting a demand on your muscle, as we've already just talked about. The third way is if you are diabetic and your insulin is very high, insulin by itself is also a growth factor to the point that some bodybuilders actually inject themselves with insulin because they want to both preserve the muscle mass that they have and possibly stimulate more growth. So when we look at IGF like this, what we have to do is call out all of those who are insulin resistant or have really above normal ranges, in my view, above normal ranges of insulin. So here's the insulin number. So here's your IGF, highest to lowest, 244, and it's a kid of 16 to a woman of 77, so you see quite the range. But within that, none of them are anywhere above, except for one, are above the 25% range of non-diabetics. So we have to subtract all those who have insulin resistance, and all three of these down here are about insulin resistance, but we're just going to use the HOMA IR, which is pretty standard. And the other thing we can look at is here's their insulin that I made big and bold. Look how high that insulin is. So when you can compare people, here's a young kid, that's still too high. You really need one or two. 2 would be a great number for insulin. 5 is acceptable. Beyond 5, it's terrible. In my view, and most people who have a clue in terms of practicing medicine. So, but here the normals are 4.3, that's marginally, I said within 5. Here's another one, 3.5, there's 1.2, excellent. There's 2.7, excellent, 3.3, and 3.1. So there's some normal people here, but there's some that have huge amounts of insulin, 30.7. Jeez, if you were just to look at their glucose number, which is right below it, you would say, oh, good number. This person has high insulin, say 118, a little high, work on it. They're enormously high considering how much insulin their pancreas is pumping out. Here's one 4.3, pretty normal insulin. And you'd say, well, you know, you have a good glucose, you could get that down a little bit. Here's somebody else high. So when you compare these two, glucose by itself does not tell the whole story. Far from it tells the whole story. So what we have to do is call out all the ones that are insulin sensitive. So let's do that now. So now I did exactly that. I put all the ones that are insulin resistant to the right and all the relatively healthy people that are non-insulin resistant to the left. So what we're seeing here, these people are by IGF numbers, they've created their IGF number either by working out or amount of protein and or lack thereof, right? So we still have healthy glucose and insulin sensitive people that still have very poor IGF. So yes, they're all healthy, still very low, and that's for a 77-year-old woman. It should be at least twice that amount. And when you go across the board, however, we have one 67-year-old woman who is clearly right above mid-range, pretty close to 3/4, and that's self-induced by working out and having an appropriate amount of protein on a daily basis. So that's the difference it can make. So when you scale this across, and there's all sorts of ages, let's say here's a 64-year-old male down here, that it should be close to twice that, but lack of appropriate protein, lack of working out, the number's not good. So therefore his immune system could be very much impaired on an ongoing basis. He's much more vulnerable to various illnesses, cancer, so on and so forth because of this. So this is important. 2 ways to get there. The third way is the unhealthy way of via insulin, which is not what you want to do. But also I wanted to bring in other lines. So we already went through, there's the insulin, right? So we have normal insulin ranges for all these people. Then we have, here's their glucose. What's the highest glucose we had of the healthy people was 101. That's fine. I would like it 20 points lower, but, and their insulin's fine. They could work on it. Their hemoglobin, they're actually just pre-diabetic, just under the pre-diabetic line. 5.7 is diabetes. inflammation. Now we go, wait a minute, this person over here, this woman who is so healthy, has elevated inflammation. Where's that coming from? We'll get to that in a second. I also lined it up relative to total cholesterol. So it's really interesting. The healthy people have much higher total cholesterol, and the unhealthy, the insulin sensitive high or insulin elevated, insulin way too high, have low total cholesterol. So that's pretty interesting. The whole idea of get your cholesterol down, don't get your cholesterol down. Work on your IGF and your cholesterol will be just fine. With vitamin D, it's irrelevant to vitamin D. So if you're low on vitamin D, that by itself can cause inflammation. So you have to pay attention to that. You either take it or you get in the sun, right? So we look at other people who are low as well. What is their inflammation? Their inflammation was 2. It should be less than 1. So it's a factor. Homocysteine, also unrelated to IGF. Homocysteine either is you're not getting enough B12, choline, and folate, or you're genetically predisposed and you need more of it. So when you couple people who have this greater need plus vitamin D, they are, which is this person, I know that personally, will result in elevated inflammation. So there's some other things they need to look at. Also, then when you look at your omega-3 to 6, they have a great ratio. Well, great ratio. We wish we were 1-to-1, but in terms of reality, look at those ratios over here. People who are insulin sensitive weren't doing themselves any favor by having such a hugely distorted ratio of omega-6 to 3. Here is omega-3 down here. What you're looking for is 8. So nobody got an 8 of anybody. But those who were pretty close, 7.2, 7.2, they were obviously on the healthier side. So when you look over here, they are, except for this person right here, who's probably taking fish oil, good for them, otherwise they'd really be bad off. So you start to line up some of these other factors. But IGF, you don't have to take a supplement, you basically just have to take your 15 minutes twice a week. There you go. It takes effort, it takes discipline, it takes doing it. So why is this a secret? Why is this a secret? You know, if I was to choose any of my neighbors, somebody randomly off the street who was willing to give me 15 minutes once a week, twice a week is better. I could transform their lives probably in the course of a month, certainly in 6 months, and absolutely in the course of a year. You've now seen the labs will change. Insulin-like growth factor. It's going to drive other changes as well for the benefit, whether it's hormonal, whether it's metabolic, whether it's immunologic, whether it's cerebral. This is profound. I hope you'll think about including this in your day-to-day. We'll talk about the protein more next time. The last 2 points I want to mention that are very important. One is to be consistent, to have consistent tension. That is, you go slowly and consistently. It's not like, back. Not that at all. Not that at all. Please, not that at all. It's very slowly, whether it's out or up or down, whatever the direction is, it's slow. If you can't continue, then you've reached failure. So the other is, as we've said again and again and again, it's 30 to 90 seconds. So what are you going to do to make it last so long? So what we do is that we count to 10. We actually have the other person count. We do 1, 2, actually we go 4, 5, then 9, 10, 4, 5, 9, 10, and we go through that slowly. You can count to 15, but it has to be slow. And the counting does help. It helps us for sure. So there you go. Get your phone out. If you're doing it by yourself, you'll get used to that. Count out loud if you have to. It's pretty straightforward. If you're with somebody and you have a workout buddy, even if it's at home, your husband or your partner, there you go. You could just have them count. You can go 1, 2, count the full 10 or 15, whatever you want to do, but you're going slowly. It's almost an isometric. So that's the most important, is to know that it's consistent tension, 30 seconds to 90 seconds to failure. You have to fail. You have to be, you can't make it. You can't do another one in that period of time. So it's not doing 40 push-ups. And the last thing is you got to recover. So for the next 2 days, just casual activity for the next 48 hours. Stay out of the gym. That's important. You have to allow your muscles to recuperate. They have to rebuild themselves because your exertion, believe it or not, has broken down tissue. It's broken down muscle mass. And that's how you have to rebuild it. If you don't wait those 2 days, you will interfere with the process and you will not get the same results. Until next time. So if this is something that you're interested in, that is a topic that I obviously go deeper in terms of labs, in terms of how to do it, in terms of why you would want to do it, various topics as you've seen that I've done in the past, then please let me know below in a comment. Till then.